Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Good. I'm super excited for this conversation. We had a lot of fun chatting about it. We've had a couple opportunities to talk through it, and this is really, I think this is just, it's very topical, it's relevant. I don't know if you saw the results of the poll that we did this morning, right, where we wanted to find out how is third-party ordering a challenge? Is it working, or is it not working, and how is it not working? And the number one not working was the staff getting overwhelmed,
Correct.
right? So, yep, thank you. We've got the results up here. The number one challenge that the folks in the room said, and I just want to point out, and I said this morning, only a third are saying that it's actually working well. So that second option, which is the second longest bar there, 33%, said that third-party ordering is working well. For the rest of the folks in the room, there are complexities, and the number one challenge is staff gets overwhelmed. They turn their third-party ordering channels off. Kitchen gets backed up. I think AI is playing a role in helping, for several of your brands, helping to mitigate that. So what I'd love to do, dig in and just talk a little bit about how are you actively using artificial intelligence in your stores today? And then what are some of the results that you're seeing? Phil, why don't you start us off?
Sure, yeah. Look, like many other companies, we're completely embracing this new technology. We've partnered with a couple different providers nationwide. We have some current proof of concepts in our market, specifically in Nashville, leveraging the AI technology through our drive-thru. As most of you know, Carl's and Hardee's is primarily a drive-thru QSR. We see that potential opportunity for us to be a big game changer in our industry, specifically in ours, where we try to fill that gap of the employee that, quite frankly, nobody wants that job right now. It increases the consumer sentiment, the accuracy, but more importantly, since we talked about the staff, they're overwhelmingly positively engaged in this because it relieves them some of the mundane tasks they currently have to do. And so far, it's been very beneficial. And hopefully, as we continue to partner with other AI solutions, we can expand the capability and find a best of breed for both of our concepts.
Yeah. Justin, you're also doing drive-thru AI at Duncan Brands. You want to tell us a little bit about what your experience has been?
We are. We're in early stages at this point. It's very exciting. So what we've seen, we put in technology into our restaurants. We let it learn for 2-3 months, listen to orders. It's in a store in Rhode Island, so it's got a lot of interesting accents to pick up on from Boston area. And it's done pretty well with that. Very recently, we've been able to turn it on for a couple of day parts and to see the results. And I think the most interesting part is, one, the customers have engaged with it very well. There's no pushback. Customers seem to like it. They ask questions about it when we're out there kind of monitoring. The most important piece is the results are good. We're seeing drive-through times on average or better than our system in general, and order accuracy is very good. Folks in the restaurant can still listen in, and if there's a problem, say donut's not there that the system doesn't know about, they can quickly intervene and fix that. But overall, our results have been very positive. And one of the really interesting pieces is watching it learn. It's like the machine actually does grow, because what we see is that our regular orders, a medium regular, a breakfast sandwich, something that someone orders every day, the machine really has all that data and has a high level of confidence. When you order it, it knows exactly how to inject that order into the POS. When you have our LTOs, so something that it just doesn't have enough data to mine yet, it gets it right, but there is a perceptible pause. And to me, you can almost see it getting better with time, and I think that's just fascinating to watch, just as a technologist and a user of this technology. I sat there and I did like 4 or 5 drives through the drive-thru when I was testing it a couple weeks ago, and it's so far so good. So we're excited about it.
Okay, that's great. Dan, with Taziki's, tell us a little bit about your brand and then how you're using AI.
Yeah, great to be here. Taziki's is a fun, modern take on Mediterranean. We're approaching our 100th unit this year. And we've been very entrepreneurial and tech-driven really since the beginning. And I think when you look at, COVID has brought a lot of upside to our industry, right? So what was maybe a gradual evolution needs to be a revolution, and we need to be adopting technology. And we are. But I think we are both in our kitchens and also with our guests. But I think the very idea of artificial intelligence sort of begs the question about okay, well, what did COVID hurt? And I think the reality is we're a lot less intelligent in many ways. So many of our guests like this mass migration away from dine-in to many omni-channel off-premise experiences. We're serving food to strangers in so many cases, and we don't know their names, we don't know their preferences, and so that has changed things and requires us to think differently about how we fill the gap with some technology and AI. And likewise in the kitchens, great. So all this omni-channel order is great. It's saved us, third party saved us in a lot of ways. We turned on every faucet and in came all the orders, but of all different sizes at all different times. And yeah, there's load balancing here and there's throttling there, but these are all like rigid, outdated business rules. And it's not smart enough for the type of orders heading our way. And otherwise our kitchens are constantly in a, everything's on or quick, turn it off. And that is not a great way to run a business. And so I think it comes back to, we don't want to be in a defensive posture of just protecting our staff, but really being able to be, playing offense to support our staff and our guests. So yeah, we have been testing both on the guest side, text marketing that's conversational and uses AI in order to facilitate a better follow-up, onboarding into our loyalty programs, et cetera. Moving our marketing from just mass marketing to cohort marketing to one-to-one marketing and really listening and paying attention to what the guests want and communicating not just the right thing to the right person, but at the right time. And on the kitchen side, we're in the early stages of looking at some really cool kitchen capacity management with fresh technology and been working through some modeling on that.
Okay, to address, I think, that pain point that a lot of the people in the room said, which is it's just managing the capacity, right? Staff gets overwhelmed, they unplug the devices, and do they even plug them back in again?
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the more progressive, like the next generation of potential killer app for AI. Phil, I think you had some really cool thoughts on this. You want to start us off?
Yeah, so similar like in the kitchen, we believe like the nucleus moves from the front of house actually to the kitchen. We actually start leveraging a lot of the machine learning and all the different data inputs that come in to make the operation smarter, more efficient, right? I also look at some of the technologies, obviously Helimeter won yesterday as well, and some of the different camera technologies that are out there make the business itself more efficient. And then some of the headset technologies where we can leverage our employees rather than going to a POS, an 8690, they can actually talk to a bot. And it can do a variety of functional things. We're testing robotics using AI in our labs, in our offices, potentially down the line too. There's other things that AI can leverage inside of our four walls, but also outside the four walls to make us smarter and work less hard. Work smarter and not harder in a variety of different facets. Because the data sets we're getting, we've never seen this plethora of data that becomes actionable. And then we can make quantifiable decisions off of that as long as we do it correctly in a very controlled environment.
So Phil, in some of the testing use cases that you're experimenting with, do you feel like the technology is there and is it ready? Are you impressed with what you're seeing?
I am very impressed with what I'm seeing. I think, again, to your point, COVID has done a lot of things to accelerate these. We've also taken AI from different industries and injected it into ours because we've been so far behind in a variety of different technology stacks. So in some cases, yes, it's early, it's new, but like anything, you got to fail fast and learn faster. So I think in doing that with some of the technologies that we're playing with, we're going to see rapid deployment, but also rapid success because we're kind of learning as we're going. There are some technologies that are so far right, but that's the kind of stuff that gets me jazzed, right? Because that's the stuff that's going to be groundbreaking that makes our brands relevant again and then revolutionary as well. I think somebody said, and I forget the gentleman's name, we're no longer part of digital transformation. Those days are gone. We're in the digital evolution stage, and we continue to use that and evolve as we progress in our journey.
Yeah, that's really cool. Justin, from your perspective, what's sort of the cool killer app, longer term AI applications that you'd be excited about?
So these guys both mentioned it, and I totally agree. We do focus a lot, and kind of the sexier stuff is front of house, how you're interacting with the customer. But I think the bang for your buck is going to be on the back of house. And I know we talked about this in our previous sessions, and that's really where we're excited. We're in some very early stages looking at camera AI-based inventory, something that can actually look at a rack and say, like, that's how many donuts are left, and that's how many types of donuts are left, so that you can instantly tell your customers, we can't order that here. Because right now, that's a manual process where the manager has to look through, go on the app and say, we're out of butternut donuts today, and therefore, the customer is going to be disappointed when they come in. So if you can automate that and take those tasks away, it's going to free up labor to interact with customers in a more positive way and just to make our customers' experience a lot better. So I think from what I've seen in the industry and read, voice and camera seem to be the next frontier where we really start to apply that to our business and apply that to our restaurants. Right now, I think I'm excited to see what's next. We haven't fully, I guess, felt the impacts yet, and that's exciting. Looking forward to the next year, 2 years, when some of this stuff comes to fruition in the restaurants, and we can tell our franchisees, this is labor saving. This is going to help. This is going to drive sales on the top end. This will help you redeploy labor, help you find people, which is a whole nother area that I think AI can help with as well, because we're all struggling with that, just finding crew for our restaurants. So I'm waiting for the killer app to do that, because I think that would delight a lot of our franchisees and operators.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about the labor piece, because I know that's it's certainly really relevant with how does AI impact perception. Before we dig into that, Dan, I'd love your what's your killer app prediction, some of the cooler things. I know you mentioned personalization a little bit. What's your sort of killer app, the cool stuff for AI that you're looking for next?
Yeah, I'll go back to the both of those matter. They seem like they're two sides of the same coin. Like particularly the omni-channel disruption has made it now very difficult in the kitchen and also very difficult for us to understand our guests. So I don't really want to solve one or the other, but really need to tackle both. Different technologies for each, but I think AI, machine learning plays a part in both. But back on the kitchen side, I guess it's both. We went back into the study, and it's like we were only accurate 36% of the time in this study as far as when we promised a curbside time, pickup time, delivery time. And so that is well below anybody's standards, right? And so it's not for lack of, it is sometimes for lack of staff, but it's not for lack of trying. It is, again, this rapid fire, random fire orders coming in. And part of it goes back to what has worked for a long time just isn't working anymore, right? So our very simplistic approach to projecting what sales are going to be, and from that projecting what labor's scheduling should be, and food ordering, et cetera, downstream. And that level of really general predictive analysis is just not quite getting us there. So when we went back with some machine learning and AI modeling, we were able to get that to 74% accurate.
Wow, that's tremendous.
And we've got to honor each channel as its own thing and understand the complexities of the right expectation management and throttling in each channel and across all channels. So you're looking at the total universe of orders that are inbound. So then we can optimize our labor, our scheduling, and how we're staging our kitchen. And one of the things we always try to say is, we want to say yes to the guest as much as possible, right? And so, of course, across the whole market, it might be true that one store is at max capacity and could not make one more order in that hour. It's just not possible. But we can either leverage other times or other locations. And how do we build a more flexible ecosystem to find a way to say yes to the guest? We might have to have a little more dialogue with the guest instead of just offering a fixed time. But I think that's where some of that machine learning and AI it is progressing and needs to progress so we can become more intelligent.
Yeah. It's been really interesting to me over the course of the last day and a half here of MERTEC how much of the conversation has shifted to the kitchen for technology, right? When I think back over MERTEC over the years, right, and I've been doing MERTEC for a lot of years, we talked first about technology as keeping the lights on and operations and enabling the restaurant. And then the focus shifted to the guest environment, the guest experience, and how could we create those moments of surprise and delight. And because of the escalation, certainly of COVID, impact on labor, but also I think we did so much guest-facing stuff so quickly, right? We spent the last couple of years just focusing on some of those things very rapidly. It's all been focused on a lot of conversation around kitchen. Are you seeing that as well, where conversations, kitchen technology? We heard in yesterday's keynote, John Taffer, I mean, he screamed at us from the stage, right?
Shocking.
I'd love to just kind of get your thoughts a little bit on that kind of evolution of technology as a focus area for restaurants. And it seems like kitchen's really become a major focal point again.
Yeah, I'll start. I think a lot of the smart kitchens, because a lot of the kitchen technology is not even technology, it's old antiquated systems that haven't evolved over the last decade or so. with the evolution of IoT and other sensors and other things that we can actually partner with our providers and start creating these smarter kitchen operation utilitarian tools that we have all the time, really will become the dynamic change of how kitchen operations has. I've said it before, and I think in the future, the nucleus of the restaurant really will continue to evolve into the kitchen operation and to be smarter and work more efficiently there. We need our partners in the manufacturing side to start thinking about that same thing. We no longer have par sheets where you go in the back and you print it out. It's actually done for you on a device, and it takes, to your point, Dan, a lot of the human elements away, and the intelligence is be utilizing the technology that's out there, because you're running all these machine learnings and metrics and models of real-time data as compared to historical trends in order to make wise decisions that have effect on waste and consumption and guest expectations and so forth. So I think that's the number one priority, and that's going to be our job, is to get with our supply chain partners and talk to how do you redefine the kitchen, albeit like the old Founder movie where they redesigned the kitchen operation from a seamless, so many points of pivot, make the equipment smarter in and of itself to make us smarter and more efficient in the kitchen.
Are you having more conversations that involve your kitchen equipment manufacturers than you've ever done previously?
Absolutely, and I won't name the names, obviously, for some confidentiality, but we're doing a lot of things in the drive-thru, and you may see it at some of our competition. Whereas automated drink dispensers are a good example of one. It takes away the element of the mundane task of always hitting Coke, and it automatically deploys it, and it reads the point of sale system. We've all seen Flippy. And I think White Castle's doing the fries.
Yeah.
It's no nuance there that is a mundane task that our staff really doesn't like to really do. So that's kind of operational efficiencies we can gain by leveraging robotics and/or AI or machine learning will be the game changer of the store of the future.
Yeah, yeah. Any thoughts from the other gentlemen on this topic?
We've, at one of our Inspire concepts, Buffalo Wild Wings, we're also using Flippy. So Flippy's popular. Very excited to flip wings in the restaurant. And really, again, it's a mundane task. People get burned. It's not something our employees want to do necessarily. So it's great to leverage that technology. Other pieces in the kitchen itself, we're seeing automated removal of oils, waste, grease traps, getting that stuff out of there. Again, a terrible task that nobody wants to do in the kitchen. Free up that labor, move it somewhere else. So those are value adds we can provide to our restaurants. Our customers don't see them, but overall, I think to your point, we're hearing the same from our franchisees in the Inspire world, is that we need to focus on the kitchen now. Yes, we've done all these cool things to pull in the orders. How do we handle them? You need to help us focus, bring technology solutions to the table that help us manage that in the back office. And that's, I think, what we're up here talking about. We all seem to be right in line on that.
That's great. Dan, anything?
Yeah, we've been, going back a couple years, we had a major initiative working on HACCP and some IoT technologies, and there's all the things that if you had all the time in the world that you would have this eternal checklist. And so how do you let your equipment work for you and your other devices in your restaurant space communicate the right information with triggered alerts, actionable alerts? It allows the managers who, again, with so much turnover, are less intelligent and a bit more dumb. It gives them time to learn the business and focus on people, whether it's their staff or it's the guests, and less about trying to maintain this eternal checklist. That's key. We've been doing that for multiple years, and this last year we've been working with a great firm out of San Francisco called the Culinary Edge, and evaluating our menu. Our menu's been very consistent for over 20 years, and there's some menu engineering, but a lot of it's not about changing who we are and what we do. We're a scratch kitchen, but it is about looking at what is the equipment changes and mechanizing some of the processes to be smarter in how we use our time. And I think we'll talk about this later, as we did on our previous conversation, but none of this is about displacing the workforce.
Yeah.
This is, if we're successful, it will empower us to have enough workforce to keep growing. All of us want to keep growing, and many are poised to do so. And so all of these moves allow us to position our staff to do more high value actions, and allow us to add more units.
Yeah. So let's talk about the labor component. I want to share with everybody just a quick anecdote since we've been here. in Las Vegas. I was getting on the elevator, and I had my Mertech badge on a couple days ago, and somebody that was in the elevator that was not here for the show saw the badge, and they were like, "Oh, are you with that restaurant technology event? I keep seeing those gigantic RTN pins all over the place." And I was like, "Yeah, that's us." And she said, "What's going on with technology in restaurants? Is it like point of sale?" And I was like, "Well, of course, it's point of sale, right?" But it's also, and we touched on like some of those really cool things of, curbside and how have we served guests over the last couple of years. And I mentioned to her, and we're also looking at how can we use things like predictive ordering, predictive analytics, artificial intelligence to make the kitchen easier, run more smoothly, right? I stayed kind of high level, but as soon as I mentioned artificial intelligence to her, her response was, "Oh yeah, but then that's gonna be somebody's job that you're taking away," right?
Yeah.
So I think you all can certainly articulate, and we heard John Taffer mention it yesterday, we've heard many people say, this is about, yes, we absolutely have a labor shortage, but bigger picture, longer term, this is about putting people in a role where they can create an experience for a guest, because there's other things we can do more effectively. We understand that, but the consumer's perspective is, that's taking away a job, right? So I'd love to just spend a few minutes talking about how do we address that? Do we have a responsibility to try and change that narrative a little bit? Are you thinking about that as you're thinking about some of these technology deployments?
I know from our perspective, we certainly are. Being a franchised organization at Duncan and Baskin, fully franchised at Duncan and Baskin, we're a little bit careful with how we deploy labor and how we tell our franchisees to. But what I can share is that when we do deploy what we're working on now, this AI technology, as well as other innovations which aren't in the AI space, but self-ordering kiosks and other kind of customer satisfaction or customer ordering improvements, we do not ever see a drop in labor. If anything, certainly to roll out, we need more laborers. We need to direct somebody to the kiosk and say, this is how you use this. This is this really great thing we have. And helping customers get there. And then that person, they don't go away. Then they can, once customers get comfortable with the technology, then that person can be redeployed to go do something that a machine can't do, that we need them to do to help customers, to help make sure their order's accurate, to help make sure their food comes out on time. So our experience, we certainly haven't seen a reduction in humans that have to kind of manage or operate around the technology. If anything, they've helped each other. We've grown because of it.
Okay, great.
And I think similar, like I'm a heavily franchised organization, and a lot of my successes as well as the organizational successes has been the mutual relationship we have with our franchisees to understand that we're all in this together. But I also think it's also how we communicate, to your point, to the public, the unbeknownst consumer that thinks that they have this mystique that we are taking away for robots. Think of all the science fiction movies we have. But I think as a collective, as an industry, we need to utilize the mediums that we have to illustrate that we're doing not that. We're actually doing it for the consumer, but we're also doing it better for those employees that do love this industry, that this actually gives them opportunities to grow with inside our organizations where traditionally they never have been. Nobody ever wants to be the fry guy, right? Maybe they want to go into a technology role. Right. This actually entices them to look at the technology, how they involve in an organization, but from the consumer standpoint, if we eloquently describe that to them, that we're utilizing this to increase speed of service, to offset some of these mundane tasks that we keep saying. But more importantly, that we articulate the mission of what our goal is, then I think the mystique goes away that we're taking away labor. Mm-hmm. And again, we've all said it, we're not taking away if nobody wants the job. I don't think the consumer sentiment out there realizes that. The news keeps blasting these negativity statements. But it's not just our industry. Every industry is impacted. And there are better industries that are doing a better job than we are of saying that. And I think it's part of our goal as a collective to do so.
Yeah. That's a great point.
It seems like it's a question that made more sense 5 years ago than today.
Totally.
But nonetheless, the stigma, lingers a little bit. So there might be a little bit of a marketing effort that needs to be made about how we talk about it, to your point. So, whether it's like tech-enabled operations or come get a tech-enabled restaurant job. I think if when you zoom back a little bit, I look at like the American model of restaurants versus say like the European model of restaurants, right? European model of restaurants is more a professionalized job, and people come and stay, and they've been paid very well. They have benefits. It's a more tenured position. and they treat it that way. In America, like most things, like we celebrate the start at the bottom and rise to the top, the entrepreneurial, and the first step on everybody's journey is to work at a restaurant, right? And there's been many effective commercial campaigns about this, and it's not a bad narrative, but the problem is it sets it up for this inevitable turnover. And we're all just like comfortable, like this is not a big deal. Like, oh yeah, 100, 150% turnover is just, yeah, what a great industry.
The norm.
Yeah, this is the norm. What a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
Instead of saying like, well, wait a minute, why do people leave? And to some degree, there has been a reckoning with pay and benefits, and everyone is modernizing and catching up to the reality of the world. And that's probably a long time coming. On the flip side, I think we're recognizing that actually a lot of people, like nobody wants to get a job washing dishes. Nobody wants to get a job really working at a fry station for a long period of time. I did that too. Yeah. But so why don't we identify the areas what they do want, what they really do want is maybe to work in the hospitality business. They realize this is about, we're in the people business and that we make food for people and that there are jobs there and all the peripheral services, whether it's accounting or HR or technology, that is of interest to them. And take the jobs that really everybody is leaving, the hard grunt work jobs, and let's modernize those and so have a tech-enabled operations that people would want to come and maybe stay a bit longer.
Yes, exactly. You're really you're really speaking to something that I feel passionately about, which is that idea that technology can be part of the narrative to attract talent,
Yes.
right? We're talking about 18 to 24. That's the hiring population. What are these people doing? I don't have my phone up here, shockingly, but they're walking around. Everybody's got their devices, and cool technology like AI, like the drive-thru experience, like kitchens that are smart.
Yeah.
That's an attractant to someone who is thinking about their own career path. And you might actually start to attract someone and get them involved in wanting to be in a really kind of a sexy restaurant environment. Yeah. Have you seen any shifts in people that are interested in coming to work for you because you're leaning in more on technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as our narrative gets out there that we're evolving and we have national launches coming up with a variety of app and mobile ordering and loyalty and so forth, but also some of the things we're talking about, AI and robotics, and some of my team are here. We're getting people interested at the store level that want to move up, but also folks that have never been in our industry that want to come to it because they now see that we are that beacon of light, that they're evolving and they're doing these new things that other industries can't do, number one, or number two, choose not to. But we're going to take that risk and do it. And now they want to get involved and be part of that new foundational play that years down the line will say, I remember when we started this, and that merchant conversation about AI was so great, and now 6 years later, it's everywhere in the world. And they were part of that journey from the get-go.
Yeah.
We're seeing it completely in our hiring process.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I would definitely say from attracting staff, and part of the narrative, it's attracting staff, it's also being relevant to guests. So again, I mean, we looked in the last year, we had over 40% like new guests compared to existing guests that came back in frequency.
Wow.
And that's a huge amount of trial, right? So our top line sales and our and growth from that perspective is amazing. But you look at that, we recognize how little we get to know our guests when your interaction with them is cut down to either 13 seconds or 30 seconds in a takeout or curbside experience or a drive-thru experience, or even less if it's handled by a third-party delivery driver. And so now our ability to monitor even the guests, how they order, what their preferences are, and communicate to them more personalized in a way. So it's the same thing. We're emulating what we do if it was 100% dine-in, and we were the cheers in the town, and we knew everybody that came in. We knew them by their name, and we knew would you like your regular table, your regular order, right? We need to step up to do that, whether that is a digital guest or a dine-in guest. And so when we're making efforts like that, younger generations come in and say, yeah, this is how I shop. Yeah. This is what I do. This is what retail's been doing for a long time. Like, hello, restaurant industry, catch up here a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's when we make efforts, and we as a brand always, we'll be 100 units here very shortly this year and doubling quickly. When we're trying to attract staff, they're looking for brands that they have shared values, they're going someplace, and that are relevant. That we're operating and offering to our customers ways that those younger employees like to interact with brands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the relevancy is key. Like that's what our crew members care about, and they want to know that they're working for a relevant brand. There's a lot of choices. We can't get enough of them. We have to make it. We have to give them the present the value proposition to them. You get to work with this cool technology. Instead of flipping fries, maybe you can take the line busting tablet and go to the drive-thru,
Right.
and that's a different experience. And we know from our experience, and even just personally driving through like a Chick-fil-A and talking to the folks, like they like being out there. It's cool. It's a different part of working, and it provides a little bit more excitement, and it's better than the mundane. So
Yeah.
it works.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's connected to what we've been talking about. In your recruitment process, do you know if technology is discussed and as an attractant? Are you telling potential applicants about how you are using technology to be a progressive, exciting place to work?
In some of the operations where we're testing, absolutely. I think from a technology, and we're hiring folks in my departments, absolutely. We're kind of laying out the roadmap of where we're going. It is part of the overall equation because, again, to your point, we have to be relevant. If you can go through a Duncan and it says, hey, Phil, welcome back, and it personalizes your experience, and to your point, Dan, if they're using it already in any of their social feeds, they get their likes and their dislikes and so forth. It resonates with them. So yes, it is part of our spiel, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because they have to understand where we're going. Because the new employee is no longer worried about, I only want a 6-month job. They want to think about where am I going to go and be aligned, emotionally with that brand and have tangible ties to them, and not just another job.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely, we have 5 core values that we aspirationally try to live up to. And the first one is connection with each other and our guests. And the last one is to stay relevant. And so we kind of bookend this idea that we are really in the people business. And so connection in this world means that needs to work both, inline and online. It works in the physical world and the digital world. And so how are we doing both? And so connection and relevancy are really becoming much more closely related to each other. So we talk about that's who we are and make sure that they resonate with that they usually the younger the person, the more that those are priorities to them. Look, we have a long way to go. I think it's yes, the interview process, but we can say all that. Then the moment they fill out their paperwork, hopefully online, maybe text to apply, that then they're immediately ushered into a really seamless digital experience of like, welcome to the team, and here's your online training platform, and even the process of just like clocking in and clocking out. That can be like, hello 1980s, or it can feel relevant to them. And these are the devices and the types of UI UX that I interface with. And so, all of that technology becomes like fulfilling the promise we made when we hired them. They're like, yeah, we said we were relevant, and we might be relevant to the guests because we have maybe a cool mobile app, but are we relevant to that staff member, that team member, in all of the tech that they touch every single day? So this is our collective challenge of we've really got, and I think, man, there's some amazing thought leadership in this room and that room that has really got a lot of the puzzle pieces as we're all trying to figure out how to put the puzzle together.
Yeah. I know we've spent the last few minutes really leaning in on labor, but we're talking about artificial intelligence. I don't think you can do justice to artificial intelligence without turning over, then shining the light in all the corners of the impact on the humanity, the human element of it, right? We're talking about artificial intelligence and human intelligence. So we have to see them and think about them and have some of those conversations where you're thinking about it from a very strategic level in tandem, because that perception of that woman in that elevator is reality, right?
Right, it is.
I want to see if there are any questions in the room for our panel. I have another question, but I just want to give the folks in the room, if there are any questions, an opportunity. I know we'll have some mics moving around here momentarily. So if you do have a question for our panel, please go ahead and get your hand up and we'll get you a microphone. I think we do have a hand up over here. We're going to get you a microphone. Yeah. You get used to it after a while.
Those glasses are working well.
Hi. How do you decide about whether or not to implement a technology that's already pre-made or to build it from scratch in-house?
I think from my standpoint, it comes down to the ROI, right? There are certain things that we just don't have the skill set to do internally, nor the talent to do it in-house. And there are some companies across the new room over there, others that have already done it. And so when it comes to a speed of market play, to me, that's what number one thing it comes down to. Is the technology good enough? And is it something that is relevant and can be deployed in a current ecosystem of my tech stack and my marketing stack, quite frankly, where I'm not having to reinvent the wheel. And that to me is like the number one thing, because if I have to go build it, then I gotta support it, and I'm not gonna be able to dedicate all my resources and my time and material when that's their whole sole focus and ecosystem that they're working on, from my standpoint. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, very similar. We balance that a little bit with this decision is how much ownership does Inspire Brands want of the data, of that tech, so that we can scale it to our different brands in the future if we roll it out to not just Duncan, but everyone else. So we have to balance that decision, but there are, you go through the room, like you said, Phil, you go through the room yesterday, you're like, why would we build this? You guys already figured it out. You've done it great, and there's a lot of examples like that. But it's always, it's always a toss-up, and speed to market, ROI is the absolute key.
Yeah, I mean, largely comes down to it's just math, but there's a little more to it. Like you've got to look at just functionality, but also flexibility. How does that piece play well with the other pieces you have in your tech stack? I think data, as you mentioned, it becomes now more and more important, whether data about our staff and/or our guests, and being able to be able to centralize and leverage that data becomes important. And sometimes you can plug in a great tool, but it's not data friendly, and that becomes a limitation.
It's true. Yes,
Yeah.
we see that.
Right. Any other questions?
Phil, to your point of the buy versus build, if you look out into the marketplace, what industries are progressively doing this type of stuff where we could go steal their technology? We always look at grocery and retail and travel, but are there other industries that are far more progressive about this approach?
It sounds really weird, but being in Nashville, I think the medical industry itself and healthcare, specifically when COVID came around, we're all ready to go to virtual visits and such, and all the HIPAA requirements, everything going digital to apps and hospitals. I think that's an industry itself that has a bunch of unlocks that we can leverage, especially looking at how they had to evolve and bring these different technologies together in a really quick immersive, because they're under attacks from cyber all the time and InfoSec. Then they have to deal with the people that have no idea what technology is, maybe the elderly, the new generation. So I think that's an industry that itself we should go after. Because we've all looked, you're right, we've looked at retail, we've looked at grocery, we've looked at travel, but that's the one that I think really is kind of untapped kind of space that we should go spend some time with.
That's cool. So we should get somebody who's a healthcare expert on the stage here.
There you go.
You guys
Yeah.
have great perspective.
IT
Okay.
help.
Cool. We have time for one last question from the audience if there are any further final questions. So I would just say in our closing few seconds here, for anybody in the room that just has not started on a journey with AI yet, what would you recommend their first step be?
Me personally, is find the issue you're trying to solve. If you have a functional operational issue, see how AI can be plugged into that to solve it. Because AI may itself not be the solution. It may uncover a different solution to the answer you're trying to find. But that would where I start, is go find the issue and see if AI can help solve the issue itself.
Yeah, I would pile on and say, I think both, again, from a guest and a team member perspective, like get a whiteboard and start just going step by step of the journey from the point of like applying for a job to the time you retire. What are all the points of friction that happen, all the breaking points that happen? And is that something that tech in general can solve? And then where AI might be able to provide either better predictive analytics and or that back and forth teasing out of what is really needed. Like that's how I usually think about AI in these uses. And the same thing for the staff. Like think about that whole, for the guests. Think about every omni-channel experience and where there are issues and where there are breakdown and where we're trying to either listen, essentially obtain information from the guests or communicate something to them and or exchange money or information. Like there are so many little breakpoints that we don't think about. And I literally had our executive team and go through like, let's be a guest for a day. And we went through every single guest experience, digitally and in person through every single order type. And it was incredibly illuminating to realize how many breakpoints there are. And a lot of it's just really a misunderstanding or not shared expectations on timing or the order itself, where I'm supposed to park. And there's so many like little tiny things that we could solve with lots of phone calls and personal conversation, but we don't really have time to do that. So we have to plug that gap with some better tech.
Yeah.
I'd absolutely echo what you both said. I think the one other word, I guess, of caution is people do need to realize that it's not an overnight solution. As we said in our case, like it's machine learning. It has to learn, and the machine doesn't always learn immediately, and it has to get the data to get better at its job. So that's something, just as a forewarning. You're going to embark on this journey. It's going to take a little while. It has to have a solid burn-in period.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. This has been such a fascinating, fun, really cool conversation. I hope we gave some good ideas to the folks in the room. Dan, Phil, Justin, I really appreciate your ideas today.